Torah tells us at the beginning of Parshas Shemos, Vayelech ish mi beis Levi, vayikach es bas Levi. Rashi explains that Moshe Rabbeinu's parents had separated from each other because of the Gzera of Paro, who once again was responsible for reviving the Shidduch, as it were. The answer, of course, is Miriam Hanaviyah. Her claim to her father was, Paro lo goza ela al scharim, and your Gzera, the decree that you are imposing, is far more aggravating than that of Paro. The Gzera of Paro was only on the males, and your Gzera is going to relate as well to females. As a result of her presentation, Amram was convinced, once again remarried Yocheved, and as a result of that act of Vayelech ish mi beis Levi vayikach es bas Levi, the Torah tells us Moshiach shel Yisrael nolad. The salvation of Klal Yisrael, named Moshe Rabbeinu, was born. Offhand, at first glance, one could argue the Svara of Amram seems to be well-grounded and well-founded. Undoubtedly, Chazal tell us Amram was one of the Gdolei Ador, one of the greatest Torah scholars of the generation. And the Gemara tells us from Maseches Tainis that during the time of Tzara and Mitzukah, during the time of difficulty, and certainly this was a period of great difficulty for Am Yisrael, for Klal Yisrael, being persecuted by the Mitzrayim, by the Egyptian nation, there is no din of Pruvu. The din of Pruvu undergoes a halt. And we know that Moshe Rabbeinu, when Hashem appears to him, so Moshe Rabbeinu is told by Hashem Yisbarach, Anochi Hakel Elokei Avicha. So clearly his father was a great tzaddik and a great Talmid Chacham, and it would seem that the position of his father is, as I mentioned, very well founded and very well grounded. That during a time of sakana, there's no mitzvah of Pruvu. So why should one, in effect, have children when chas v'sholom they're going to be led to slaughter? Olalayich nibtzu basola, as the David HaMelech writes in Tehillim. That is the opposite of what the Torah wants. The mitzvah of Pruvu, the Chinuch, and other Rishonim right is based on Lo Sohu Bera, the Sheves Yitzhara. The Navi Yeshayahu tells us the idea is Lo Shevet, to populate the earth. And Amram felt that in this Kufa, one has to be very conservative. This question came up, of course, during the time of the Shoah, during the Holocaust. Is there a mitzvah of Pruvu when they're going to throw our children into the gas chambers, Achman al-Itzlan? So Miriam, who is the unswerving, eternal optimist, as the Torah is describing her, she obviously thought otherwise. And she was able, Baruch Hashem, to convince her father that his position was not the operative one at this point in time, at this juncture. And as a result of that, Baruch Hashem, they came together. The Shidduch was once again resuscitated, as it were, and the Smalit Kol Habayit Kula Ora, as Chazal tell us, the Gemara Tzveita, Rashi quotes it. The entire house is filled with the luminous qualities of Moshe Rabbeinu, the God Yisrael. So apparently, there's a maskana to be derived from here. That even though one may have a svara, one may have perhaps a rationale that seems to be well-founded and well-grounded, one has to be extremely cautious and careful, and sometimes one can actually even present thinking that is not necessarily completely correct, even though the thinking comes from someone who's a great person, a great tzaddik, a great Talmid Chacham. We find a similar concept in the Gemara in Brachas. Sukkah that I mentioned in Tanakh in two places, in Yeshayahu and in Malachim. Namely, the Navi describes, and the Gemara actually dramatizes this meeting between Chizkiyahu and Yeshayahu and Navi. Yeshayahu and Navi comes to criticize Chizkiyahu when he's sick, and he tells him, Tzav lebeischa, he tells him to issue your last will and testament, because he indicated to him you're going to die. You're not going to live. Chizkiyahu asks, why? Yeshayahu answers, because you weren't the kind of mitzvah Pruvu. You didn't have children. Chizkiyahu defends himself and says, there was a basis for my not having children. I saw, b'nevuah, through prophetic means, that I'm going to have children who are going to be Rishoyim. He saw Ben Rosh Menashe is going to emerge from his loins. He'll be a Sion. And as a result, I don't want to come to that level where, chas v'sholom, I won't be able to daven, as the Shabura Paskins, that in the morning when one says Leman lo niga lo rik v'lo negleg la behola, what does that mean? It means that a person should daven to have children who are obviously going to be mekayim the mitzvahs and are going to Be'ez Hashem Yisbarach fulfill all the dictum, all the tenets of the Torah to the fullest extent, in the ideal, optimal kind of fashion. And therefore, he said, that's why I didn't have children. Said Yeshayahu to him, that's not your asek. That's not your business, as it were. Your business is to be mekayim the mitzvahs. You do that what you have to do. And the other cheshbonos, they're in the hands of the Rebbeinu Shalom. At the end, it's true, Menashe, the Rosh and Merusha, was born, even though Chazal tell us, Yerushalmi called him Avediyena, that, and Psukim also seem to indicate that he did tshuva. Hashem was chote chatira, mitachas kisi hakovet. And Menashe went ahead and did tshuva, but offhand, Menashe, at least in the text of the Tanakh, appears to be a Rasha, an idolater, one who's fed up with his Zorah. But at the end, who's the son of Menashe? Yoshio HaTzadik. Yoshio HaTzadik, that Yirmiyahu HaNavi says about him, Ruach HaPeinu Mashiach Hashem, Asher Amarnu B'tzilo Nichlev HaGoyim. So that far, Chizkiyahu did not see. He just saw that he's going to have a son who's a Rasha. He didn't see beyond that. And Yirmiyahu HaNavi writes about Yoshio, that L'hoya L'fana Melech Asher Shom Al Hashem B'chol Libo B'chol Nafsho B'chol Ma'odo. He's the great Baal Tshuva. Tzidkiyahu, Taisus writes about him, he was a Chassid Gadol. And Taisus writes, V'niskara Daito Shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu Al Ador Shel Rishoyim Shero Tzidkiyahu. When Hashem saw Tzidkiyahu HaMelech, so right away, even though the door was the door of Rishoyim, but a great tzaddik has the ability to somehow propitiate the Rebbeinu Shalom. That same yisod we see actually in this vikuach, as it were, between Amram and his daughter Miriam, and Miriam prevailed in a similar fashion. Also in the Pasha, Moshe Rabbeinu argues that Klal Yisrael are not royal Geula, and as a result, Moshe Rabbeinu runs off to Midian. The Rebbeinu Shalom says, "Ro Ra'isi es ani ami Hashem b'Mitzrayim," that the way Chazal comment, you Moshe Rabbeinu, you only see Riyah Achas. V'ani yesh li harbe riyos. I have many riyos. So the Rebbeinu Shalom obviously sees what we can't see, and we have to operate and do that which we have to do, and leave the rest to the Rebbeinu Shalom. Over 100 years ago, there was a famous philosopher named Thomas Malthus, and the Malthusian theory is well known. He penned an essay where he argued that in a short period of time, the world's population will outstrip the world's food supply, and there won't be food for people to put on their table. And therefore, as a result, he decided to go ahead and present an option that essentially we will no longer fulfill the mitzvah of Pruavu, no longer have children, and use all kinds of contraceptive devices in order to prevent us from having children. But those who are maminim, and we Klal Yisrael are maminim b'nei maminim, we know the Gemara says in Psachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu zon mikarnei re'imim ad beit sekinim. So that approach is totally unacceptable. Even the Shitaso, according to Malthus, the Shitas Malthus, even according to his Shita, one can imagine that a scientist will produce some sort of a pill, that pill will provide enough nutrients to be refined the entire world. Science, Baruch Hashem, has unquestionably many beautiful and wonderful, innovative, creative kind of inventions. And as the Gemara says, Rabbi Simcha used to say that. The Meshachachim by his wife, her name was Chaya. The one who gives Chaya, he gives Bezonos. And similarly, another example can be found with reference to Yaakov Avinu, when Yosef crisscrosses the hands of his father and claims, Yaakov says, Yodati b'ni Yodati, Gam hu yelom, Gam hu yigdol, V'ulam, Ochim HaKoton yigdol, B'menu b'zari yevelo agoyim. And as Yaakov said, that which you know, I know, but I have other ideas. Just like Lahavda we said a moment ago, B'menu Shalom says, you have Riyah Chas and I have many Riyos, so to Yaakov Avinu, I have many ideas that you don't have. Yodati b'ni Yodati, and how it's going to be in the future. So unquestionably, the lesson of this is a Jew has to carry out his ishtadlus. Unquestionably, the Sifrei writes in the context of the mitzvah of tzedakah. L'man yibrach Hashem Elokeinu b'chol asher taseh. Said the Sifrei, Yochel yeshei batel. Person will think that I don't have to do anything. No ishtadlus is necessary. Ta'olom b'chol asher taseh. So a person has to be mishtadel. But at the end of the day, one should not be so obstinate and so if you will, dig in his heels, as it were, tenaciously and doggedly regarding the positions that I have, because at the end of the day, Rebbeinu Shalom is the one who directs traffic. We have to do our ishtadlus, and even when it seems that the ishtadlus is for naught, the ishtadlus is Achlan Litzan Ala Itzim Yala Avonim, as the expression goes. No, we have to be mishtadel, and ultimately the Rebbeinu Shalom will carry out that which is going to be in Yetz Hashem implemented. There were many who obviously were involved in the Gula of Mitzrayim, but at the end of the day, the Rebbeinu Shalom is the one, as the Baal HaKodah says, Ani v'lo Malach, Ani v'lo Sarav, Ani v'lo Shech. Even Moshe Rabbeinu's name is not mentioned in the Haggadah. The Rav Soloveitchik, that's how he used to point this out. Al Mishkovi Baleilos Bikashti Yis Asher Ava Nafshi Bikashti v'lo Mitzosiv. I couldn't find any reference to Moshe Rabbeinu in the Haggadah. Why? Because the Parshas says in Bay, Lel Shimurim Hu Lashem Lo Tziyam Eretz Mitzrayim. Hu Alayim Lazel Hashem Shimurim Chovanei Soladari. So that night only the Rebbeinu Shalom was operating the Malam B'derech HaTeva. We are Meshubad to carry out the divine projects that the Rebbeinu Shalom imposes upon us. We have to be Makabel Morris without that the Gemara calls in Shabbos a Tzipor Dror Sheina Makabel Morris. We have to accept the Shibud of Hashem Yisbarach. If we do that, which we have to do with Daikonis, Rebbeinu Shalom B'midah Shalom Beidid Baruch Nidlo, he'll do that which he has to do. Also with Daikonis, Moshe Rabbeinu in that schus was Makabel upon himself the particular mission, namely the divine mission, or as Rav Soloveitchik used to call it, doctrine assignment. The assignment that every Jew has to carry out, and then Rebbeinu Shalom, of course, as a result, prepared the derech l'geula. Halavai we should be zoche to following this methodology. Ki meitzeischam eretz Mitzrayim are in the flows.